Welcome to Never Too Serious with Scott and Dave. I'm Scott.
And I'm Dave.
All right, Dave, you chose the topic.
Well, yeah.
What is the topic today?
I want to talk about giants.
Uh-huh.
They're among us. They have been around for a long, long time, and I've always seen all these things on Facebook and YouTube, and even back before, these computer things that are around us, going through, all these picture books.
Yes. Are you talking about a photo album, like a family photo album?
Easy.
Oh.
Easy. Yeah, no, but, there's more to this planet that we're living on.
Yeah.
And so it's intriguing to me. So I'm like, man, it's always intrigued me, but I want to dive into it a little bit because, I see all these pictures. I'm like, all right, now that one looks a little fake. Come on. So I got to dive into it, and it makes me hate my show.
Yeah.
Disappointed. I always have all these, not just this topic, but so many topics I might be interested in. And we do a little bit of research, and I'm like, oh, good, I can finally have the time and the excuse to dig up some research about whatever I was intrigued in. And like this one, I was looking and made me cry a little bit. I was so disappointed.
It's so funny. We were talking about, once in a while we get together and do some show prep, figure out what we want to talk about. And you brought up giants, I want to say even months ago, and it made the list, and then we just went on to other stuff, and I think news kind of got in the way.
Biden's always doing something stupid we got to talk about.
Yeah, well, those newsworthy stories.
Sure.
And so at our last little meeting, you brought up giants again. I'm like, you know what? Tell me more. And then you showed me some video, and I'm like,
yeah,
man, this is cool. I want to learn more about it. And then just as you described it, and then I got disappointed.
Yeah, I was disheartened.
Disheartened.
So, but example, some of the things that I heard, in the Bible stories, and then even, some caves in the Grand Canyon, or other areas in the world that are known for their being giants, being around in their country from years and years and years ago, to these digs where people find these skulls that are the size of like a D4 cat. I mean,
yeah,
huge. You know. So I'm like, I want to see these, and I want to be able to bring that to other people and show them, like, check this out. This is maybe not where we came from, but this is a part of who we are. I mean, maybe it's where we came from, whatever. And so, so we did. And I think we have plenty to talk about.
Okay. So maybe, Ethan, let's pull up the clip of the Japanese giant.
Yeah, let's do that.
This little thing came from you. Those of you who are just listening, you can catch the show on YouTube or Rumble or Spotify, and you can catch the video version here.
So when I first saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fake. No way. Number one, I mean, I not even that there was a giant, but when I first saw it, it said something like 18. I don't know what this here says, but the one that I saw said it was like in the late 1800s. And I'm like, see, that's BS right there, because they didn't have video cameras back then. So I had enough time at that moment to go look up, did it have video cameras back then? And they kind of did. Like, what the hell is that?
It's moving pictures.
Moving pictures. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, that's got to be real then. So I was kind of excited. That was kind of not the first time, but that was something that I really wanted to, like, that really intrigued me to look more into it, because I'm like, oh my gosh, there is proof out there. So
yeah. This is a Japanese parade. There's a whole bunch of fanfare, a lot of people, waving flags. I've got horses and people walking through, the city street. Go ahead and play it. And what I found interesting, I didn't even look at any of the background behind it. I'm just watching the video, and there's this massive guy walking behind a guy on a horse, and he's wearing like a sumo diaper.
Right. And he's got to be minimum 15 feet tall.
Yeah, got to be 15 feet tall. And the camera perspective makes it look like, he's just walking down the street
and
behind this horse.
Everybody's praising him. Like maybe he's their thing that's, saving them from the bad guys.
Yeah. And so this guy has, now this Japanese guy gets his camera out, and everyone poses with this particular giant, and the adults there's a front row of adults who are sitting down, and then there's folks standing behind those adults, and then this massive giant standing behind it. When I saw this originally, because I had to go look it up after you showed it to me, and I was like, man, that guy is really huge. And then as soon as they cut to this part of the picture, I'm like, wait a minute. He was just standing behind a horse, a man on a horse,
Right.
and the guy's head was like around his diaper area.
Right.
And then in this particular freeze frame, these adults are standing above his belly button.
Right. He lost 4 feet.
Yeah, he lost 4 feet. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
possible he's taking a knee.
Well, if you watch, he's bobbing around.
Right.
He's still standing.
Kidding,
Yeah,
trust me.
but I'm just saying that in this particular video, it's interesting to see that they didn't. However, they did this editing. I mean, this is really good editing for back in the day when they made it. But there's still components that they forgot about. The scale.
Right.
You know.
But maybe they just had the biggest people in the country with him to take that picture.
Uh-huh.
So it just looks like he's
These
a
are
little smaller.
his relatives.
All these people are like 8 feet tall.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, these are that's his mom down there.
Yeah. The interesting thing is in this modern day of the internet, we can look up more information.
Yeah.
And this is where your disappointment comes in.
Because it looks good. It does, especially when he's going down the parade and everybody's like, it looked like it was for him. And and then come to find out, this was just a movie that was made just not too long ago.
Yeah, 2000 something.
2007 or something like that. I can't remember exactly. And I was so disappointed, and you could even go online and go real giants. I want to see, footage of real giants or no false, however you want to say it, and you're going to get crap.
Well, this particular one is it's for a movie. It was production for, and I can't remember, something Big Boy. Was that what it was?
I can't remember. Something giant. I can't remember either.
Anyway, maybe Ethan can figure out what movie that came from. But just because this one isn't real doesn't mean that there haven't ever been giants.
No, but
So-
I'm a guy that wants to see the proof. I want to see it. I want to.
Of course.
That helps me. It's more intriguing if I get to essentially put my finger on it.
Yeah.
And mind you, when I first saw it, it looked legit. It looked, the time era, the really crappy video footage.
Yeah, it's kind of choppy.
Right, and then you kind of think, there's only one. There's always only one giant, and why is he the only one hanging out? And how come he didn't bring his buddy or his girl or, how is there just one?
Yeah.
And giants, I'm guessing they probably don't live that long. So, you think there'd be more of them, not just one that's hung out for 1,000 years.
Okay, well, that's a good point, because when I was looking into all this stuff, most of the modern day giants really had a short lifespan. And maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. Ethan, see if you can figure out where that actually, what movie that came from. The giant. Look up Japanese giant, and maybe it's on Snopes. They debunk a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But like I said, just because this one isn't real, it doesn't mean that it isn't a real thing. But I looked everywhere trying to find something that was real, and I couldn't find any. I mean, I spent literally hours. I was deep diving into this stuff, and I couldn't find anything that had real archaeological proof.
Every maze I went down was a dead end. I had to back up with disappointment and go down. Okay, this one, I remember seeing this one. This one's a possibility. Go down into this. They're digging it. And then I see that. Oh my Lord! You know what they did? These fools are literally getting a skeleton about a foot long. It's a fake one. Lay it in this little ditch, and they just position the camera down to make it look like it's freaking 20 feet long.
Yeah, or they're photoshopping.
Yep.
Yeah, Big Man Japan is the name of that.
That's what it is.
Thank
Big
you,
Man
Ethan.
Japan. Go see it.
Yeah, go see it.
It'll change your life. My goodness.
There was a little documentary I was watching on, I think it was like Discovery or one of those channels, and this guy was going into, I think it was Minnesota, on this farmland, because there had been legends of like the Norse, like Vikings, visiting that part of America, getting really deep into the interior, because there's confirmation that they probably were the first to discover the New World or whatever, as far as the Europeans are concerned. And they thought maybe they got all the way over to Minnesota.
Well, I watched the show Vikings, and I think it's true.
Oh, that's right. You told me I should be watching that. I haven't seen it yet. But so this guy, he's curious about this. He studies this Norse culture, and this farmer on his farm said, "Hey, I was digging on my land, and I came across these bones, and so I called up the local, I don't know who he called, but
I don't know.
the local people to come out and check on it, because the county or the state has people, especially if it's tribal, they come out and verify it and stuff. And so they came out and they looked at it. When they came out, there was it was Native American, and that some of the bones were really big, and that they immediately buried it again. Like they didn't want proof or whatever. And it kind of bothered me, because it sent up that red flag in my brain that said conspiracy.
Right.
Because this guy, he was talking, to the farmer, and the farmer made it sound like there's this big cover-up, beyond the literal dirt cover-up, but a government cover-up. And I was like, gosh dang it, I don't want more like conspiracy. I really want to know, is this true? If it's true, then why would they just cover it up? I want to see the bones and whatever. And so they evidently are not allowed to dig on that particular site. Evidently, the bones are still there, supposedly. Now, there's technology to map what's underground, and you could probably map those bones out. But, of course, they didn't do that in the show. Instead, they brought out a guy, per the farmer's advice, and we talked about this on another show about water witching.
I was going to ask, is that what he did?
Yeah, he brought out his divining rods. They're like copper rods, and he went walking across the guy's property, and they laid all these flags of where the guy with the divining rod was figuring out where there's something buried. Because originally he was the guy that supposedly was able to determine where these bones actually were. And
skilled.
Yeah, right. And unfortunately the show didn't dig in those places to prove whether the divining rods actually did anything. But they marked it all, and then he called an expert who had a metal detector and went by,
brought some sonar out there,
and he started dropping flags, and then they actually dug in those places, and they found a whole bunch of different materials, and so that was interesting. But at the same time, I'm just like, they never really proved whether those bones were true, because they couldn't unearth the bones.
Yeah, but what gets me is they already accidentally did it.
Mm-hmm.
Do some investigation, bookmark what happened, and then put it back down. Go, put it back, quick,
Yeah, to the guy's credit, though, he did go back to the county, archaeologist person and asked, well, what happened here? And the guy explained that it was Native American, that the bones didn't appear to be any larger than normal. And so he kind of debunked that it was these giant set of bones.
Yeah. Well, nobody ever finds a cup or a mug that's like a foot across, and that's their glass or something that they drink out, or any utensils, or, an eating device like fork or spoon that's, 3 yards long, It's always it's always on the edge of a possibility, it seems.
Well, and then who determines what a giant is?
Yeah. Well, that's fair,
because it's not really defined.
I looked up some, way back in the day, giants, and they're talking about they were 6'3", they were this or that. Yeah. I'm like, that's not a giant. Come on, I used to be close to that height.
Used to
be. I've shrunk, and it's like, oh well, for them, these were huge, big people, but I'm not talking about big people. So
yeah,
there is a picture. Maybe E could look it up, but there's a picture, and it shows maybe 10 skeletons. And it even has dates on it, and it shows giants from back in the time, and the dates and the locations where these were found, and ranging from like 7 or 8 feet. There you go, and all the way up to like 30 feet.
Okay.
And like here's one, present day, about 6 feet.
Okay.
And then we'll just jump up to, maybe you could zoom it in a little bit.
Eyes aren't very good.
Well, it's kind of a little fuzzy font too, so it's not the easiest to read.
Old school. Oh, you're getting advertisements thrown over your screen there, Ethan.
But
yeah.
But anyways, these are supposed to represent like in what is that? I can't even read that.
Which one?
There's a 19 foot 6 inch gentleman person, and they supposedly found the skeleton back then, and so my goal is I wanted to go look at these. Okay, well, where I want to see where and hear the story about this one that they found, especially that 36-foot one back in 650 to 640 AD.
Yeah,
or BC to 640 AD. But these are what I would call real giants. Even 8 foot, that's up there. I mean, we could run into a 7-foot dude around here once in a while, and that's very tall.
Yeah.
But and to our average person, which is I really do think the average person is what, 5'10"? I can't remember.
Yeah,
something like that. And that's a big person. But man, a 10-foot human being. I mean, people might not think that. Well, 10 foot isn't really that tall. Dude, that's tall. And then picture them lifting their hand up. And I'm not talking like some person that might be, deformed in a sense. Somebody that's functional, that could run across and run across the land and hunt and survive. Most of the people these days we see that are extremely tall, they have to sit all the time, they have to lay down, they can't walk, they can't move, they're not mobile very well. And so when I talk about giants, I'm talking like,
yeah, just really big humans that are fully functional like humans.
Absolutely,
So I'm looking at this, this picture, and on there it says Goliath.
Yep.
At 10'6".
Yeah.
And I've got some clips and footage and stuff talking about Goliath.
Yeah.
Because I was very fascinated with the piece about the biblical existence of giants.
Oh, yeah. There's a
you go back to that picture, please.
There's a handful of stories about that, about Bibles.
So the
Bibles.
10'6" height of Goliath is under scrutiny. There's a few different people or sources that would disagree with that height.
Are they thinking it's too short? Or
too tall?
Too tall?
Yeah, significantly too tall.
So they're just thinking of somebody that's like Andre the Giant.
Potentially, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, in fact.
Which he's huge, but that's not how I pictured it in my
Andre
head.
Giant, I think, was like 7 feet something, upper 7 foot. Anyway, but yeah, and not very functional, by the way.
True.
Even watching his old wrestling days, it's actually kind of sad. But some of these other ones, 25 feet 6 inches from the 1600s, 650 BC, 36 feet.
Yeah.
And and again, like all the dead ends that you were talking about, going down a maze and then finding a dead end. This is one of the reasons why you then go down these mazes, and then you find out that these things aren't. There's no archaeological evidence that would confirm any of these things. It just makes you feel like, gosh, there has to be something here. Right?
Like people have that much spare time in their life just to make a bunch of bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
some people make a lot of money on that.
I guess that's what it's about. So example was, I don't know if it was this one that they're talking about, the 36-footer, but there's several of them very similar that they've unearthed. And I'm like, that have to be about that size.
Yeah.
And it's huge when somebody's next to it, and I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. Not so awesome.
Not so awesome when you dig into it.
It saddens me because I know that there's big people, but I want to believe that there's something crazy out there, I guess, for some reason. I don't know why, but I do. I like it to be, maybe I'm just bored.
No,
I want craziness.
No, I think what you're talking about is something that all humans have been doing since their existence, is that we're fascinated by these things. And this is, I think, where we move into the mythology of giants, because I mean, there are so many different cultures who have giants in their mythology. I mean, we were just talking about, in the Bible. So here's a good picture. So,
Yep.
Dave, you were talking about massive, 30-foot giant or whatever, and pictures of it.
That's one of them.
Yeah, this is one of them. And it turns out that it's totally fake.
Yep.
People who are good at Photoshop fake these things all the time.
And, it's not like I dove into it assuming it was all real.
Mm-hmm.
I was hopeful that I was going to be able to, get through the bunch of the crap to find some of the real stuff, which I did, but the magnificence of it wasn't there.
Yeah. I was watching, I looked up a lot of different documentary type stuff, and I was listening to a guy who's from, I think he's in South Africa. He's an archaeologist, and his field is in primatology, so studying of primates and humans fit into that particular category. And he was talking about a femur,
right?
And it's an interesting idea that there's some controversy over the size of this femur, because the ball socket of this femur, like the ball head, is so massive. If you imagine the size of that femoral head and the socket that it would have to fit into, and then the length of that femur,
right. You could come close to knowing how big that being is.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he was doing. He's trying to figure out statistically, based on all these other ones that they've studied, how tall this person probably was. And I want to say that it was in that upper 7-foot range. But then he brought out a Neanderthal femur.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that the femoral head on a Neanderthal is massive, and they were not giants. In fact, they were
big bones.
They were relatively short in compared to like modern day humans, but they were thick.
They were built tough.
They were built for tough.
Tonkas.
Tonka truck. Yeah. and so if you think about how they compare these different things, sometimes, unless you've got really good scientific like tools to determine age of the bone, where it was located, if there are any other bones with it, DNA sequencing, all this other stuff that they might do. But this particular bone was petrified. So there wasn't enough material there to be able to do all of those other things. So they had to make some assumptions about how tall it was in comparison to other humanoid type, bones.
Yeah.
But that to me is also very fascinating, because now you're talking about, okay, even if they pull up these bones and they're large, it doesn't necessarily mean giant, because there's still further study that they have to do.
Right. And I can't remember all this stuff, but I think that there was like some bones that they found, and even the Smithsonian was involved in it.
Yeah.
But it seemed to be true, but they just said it was a different type of humanoid thing. So, but it seemed like everything that they found was true, and I get, there's so many heights that I miss. I'll get them confused. I don't remember if this could have possibly been 11 feet tall, or if it was 8 foot taller. But they verified that there was something, but they couldn't say that it was a human being like one of us. That was, but it made it sound like it could be in a whole different kind of human. Noid. I don't know what the hell you call it.
Yeah,
being.
I've got an article from USA Today that I found, and they were fact checking some of these human remain, these skeletons, and they were describing it as it's an old hoax that keeps resurfacing, and the Smithsonian was involved in the cover up.
See,
and supposedly the Smithsonian has been collecting all of these different giant bones. Like, people, when they find them, report them, and then the Smithsonian comes in, swoops in, and then covers them up, either dumps them in the ocean or puts them in their archive and
put
for
it back
no one
in the ground for somebody else to find, so it keeps recirculating.
And of course it's all a big hoax, and it goes along the same conspiracy lines as several of our other shows like Flat Earth, that there's always some organization that's trying to keep the information silent. NASA.
Pull some. Yeah, trying to BS us.
Yeah, and that was one of the things, and it, like this article says, is that it keeps resurfacing over and over again. It's like, well,
Well, back in the day, when there was newspapers only, no TV, and I mean like dirt roads and maybe no roads, I don't know, but there were scams out there.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bunch of BS all the time. They had like the freak shows going through the circus comes to town,
Yeah.
or whatever you call it. And when the internet shows up, they can bring it all out again, make it even more fascinating and more realistic, and keep it going. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
so let's go back to the mythology and the folklore of it, because like I was saying, your curiosity has been, I think, in human existence forever. It's just people make up stories. You think about it, even as a kid, we always thought adults were like giants.
Right, sure.
We thought they were so big, we'll never get that tall. But every culture seems to have some sort of giant, mythology. And I found a few. And Ethan, if you don't mind, right at the top there, it says 10 mythical giants. We're going to go do a top 10 of the mythical giants from around the...
I'm going to debunk this or not. I'm going to tell you if it's true or not.
You're gonna...
They call it mythical, but there's some of them are there for sure. I know it.
Yeah.
See that one? That's real.
I find this interesting because it's not just like we were talking about biblical. The first one on the list, Atlas, and if you don't recall the story, Atlas was the Titan who had to bear the weight of the world on his back.
Right.
Yeah. I can't read from that far away, so I'm going to pull up my phone so I can read it a little bit more. Eventually, I will get LASIK. Okay. So in Greek mythology, Atlas was one of the Titans who went to war against Zeus's gods of Olympus. When the Titans lost, Zeus condemned Atlas to hold up the sky for all eternity.
Hell of a job.
Yeah, he's done a pretty good job. During the 12 labors of Hercules, one of his famous quests was to find the golden apple of Hesperides. I don't know if that's how you say it. Atlas offered to go and fetch the apple for Hercules if he would take the place of holding up the sky. So Atlas duly retrieved the apple and was about to take to the... Oh my gosh, these Greek mythology names I don't know how to pronounce. Eurythes.
Sure.
When Hercules asked if Atlas would mind just holding up the sky again for a moment while he got comfortable, of course, as soon as Atlas had reshouldered his heavy burden, Hercules made off with the apple and continued on his tasks, leaving Atlas with his I don't know how you say that word.
Interminable duty.
Yeah. So leaving Atlas with his duty. And
Hercules was a little shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a jerk.
Guy. Yeah, what a jerk. But it's just, it's mythology. Of course, he's not holding up the sky.
Sure.
I want to say there's like pictures of this everywhere, of Atlas holding up the world on his back.
I imagine that his hand would be like crushing something, or his back, or however, whatever, his shoulders digging into some part of it.
Yeah. It's just like a globe. But so that's Greek mythology.
Right.
It's not like that story is true. I mean, how could it be?
Right. Well,
it's a little too fantastic.
Yep.
In Ireland, there's an Irish mythology of Balor. What else do we have here?
The one-eyed god of death. Gotta watch out for that guy.
Gentil are giants from mythology of the Basque region of France and Spain.
See, everybody has their stories of their country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like everywhere. There's Norse legends.
Goliath.
Yeah, on here. Yeah, biblical giant Goliath. And there's other, and maybe we'll talk about that here in a minute, but the Bible has other stories of giants, and it depends on which interpretation you're looking at as whether some people would say that it's giants or not. But
right.
we'll get into that.
I've seen people go, dude, that's a giant dude.
Yeah.
He's a massive man, and maybe that's all it is. I mean, and there's always somebody that's a little bit bigger than the next, or smaller.
There's a Hindu epic, and I don't know how to pronounce that name, but But yeah, I mean, again, a lot of these cultures have giants as
Sure.
part of their mythology. I mean, even Native American have giant mythology.
It's almost a way to make themselves maybe appear greater than they were, or more interesting. Or
I think humans are always looking at having a higher power of some sort, and sometimes it's the stories of these mythological creatures that did so much for humanity or whatever.
right.
And it's just not, yeah, it's just not uncommon. It seems like every one of these cultures have something like this. Do you want to talk about the biblical account?
Sure.
I got some fun stuff
Yeah.
in this particular area. So Goliath is probably the most famous. And oh, you did bring in a Bible. Let me borrow your Bible here.
Be good to it.
Yeah, I'll be very careful. Because I did look it up at home and was reading through the account of Goliath, and it's an interesting story. I mean, people have told the story of Goliath, and David, when he was just a little peasant boy, took out a sling and
He
slung
smited the
slung a rock, a stone, and hit Goliath in the forehead and
Yep.
killed him, and then cut off his head and
with his own sword too. I think
with Goliath's sword.
he had it coming. He was a big bully. Ooh,
Yeah. Oh, watch out, bullies.
pun intended there. He was big.
And but what's interesting about the story is there's different accounts of whether he was like a really huge giant. We're talking, like that picture said was 10 feet something inches, and then there's other accounts of him being maybe a little bit shorter, and then other accounts saying that he's much shorter. I'll look up the notes here because I thought, you know what, it's kind of interesting to think, well, how do you know how big these people were unless someone wrote down,
Right.
measured, and figured out what that was?
Well, in my mind's eye, because I've heard this story many, many, many times in my life, and when I hear it, you paint a picture in your head while you're listening, and I didn't think of anything crazy, like where he can't even ride a horse or anything like that. But I always pictured he was in between 8 or 10 feet tall,
Yeah.
bigger than an
NBA player.
right, but a functional dude, not a guy that is getting drug around and getting waited on because he can't feed himself but
Yeah, so here's this is from Answers in Genesis, which is an interesting place because they are young Earth creationists. So they look at the Earth as being like 6,000 years old. And not just the Earth, but I mean like everything 6,000 years old. So they have a lot of biblical stuff that would confirm the belief that it's 6,000 years old. And so they have a lot of different interesting things about these stories, like Goliath. There's some other ones in here that are really interesting. But as far as Goliath goes, they're talking about approximately 6 feet 9 inches.
no, just a little guy.
6 feet 9. Now, compared to a guy who's 5 feet or 5'6", that's a giant.
There's a guy at work that I work with, and he's about 6'4", and he seems pretty dang tall.
He seems tall,
He's significantly taller. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
and I go like this. He's only this much shorter than I am, but yet he towers over me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's weird that if you imagine what an extra foot would be on top, 7 feet.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking insane. But it doesn't seem like if you just pull out a tape measure, it's like, oh, he's only this much taller than me. Well, put him next to you. There's a lot of mass there.
Yeah, so this little article here from Answers in Genesis, it's talking about a little bit about this debate. It says, there's some debate about Goliath's height due to the textual variance in ancient manuscripts. Most English translations follow the, Masoteric, I don't know how to say that word, basically listing his height as 6 cubits, which is approximately 9 feet 9 inches.
See, that's right down my alley. That's what I think.
However, the Net Bible puts Goliath at close to 7 feet tall. The reason for this discrepancy is the text differs from some ancient texts, including the Septuagint and the ancient manuscript found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay, so the Dead Sea Scrolls says that lists Goliath's height as 4 cubits. That's approximately 6 feet 9 inches.
Wow. Well, think about this, though. And I'm not trying to be funny or anything, but if he was like a 10-foot man, think of the size of the sword he would have to carry.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, regular sized dudes, they carried some heavy damn swords that you and I would have some issue slinging around.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to go get his sword to cut his head off. And he's a little dude.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't picture him picking up a 150-pound sword that a 10-foot man would be slinging around to lift over. I mean, it'd be hard because, mind you, he's a little dude too.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, I always look at those stories as, even though some people can, sling a rock, as people have proven, that they can sling a rock accurately with enough force to, to kill someone. I wonder about some of these stories as just being a story told from long ago to teach a lesson.
How to inspire the little guys to take down the big guy?
Well, yeah, that's one of the things. And the other is to follow God's commands, and that if you believe in him, you can accomplish anything, including killing this giant. So, who knows how, if the story actually happened, but just the telling of that story and the description here of being potentially 6'9" versus 9 feet 9, depending on what version of the story, or not version, but what text you're referencing. The Dead Sea Scrolls is an interesting one because there's a lot of information that came out that confirmed the stories of the Bible, because it was the most early account of those particular stories. But you can see maybe it started off at 6'9" and it ended up at 9'9".
Hey, we've all had that fishing story, right?
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah, of that one-armed guy that said that he caught a fish this big.
But seriously, but no doubt. I mean, I think you touched on earlier, it's what's your definition of a giant?
Yeah.
Because truly, because I'm not a short guy, and if I'm hanging around a guy that's 6'5" to 7 feet tall, I'm going to be in awe that they're, holy crap, you're huge.
Yeah, let alone, I haven't stood next to Shaq.
Oh, he should be over here later today if you want to come by and visit.
But think about the size of Shaq and how functional. I mean, he was dynamic. When he came into the NBA originally, he was doing some crazy stuff and dominating. And that guy was huge.
Yeah.
And, even as he got further along and he started, lifting more weights and getting stronger and all this, I mean, still very functional guy.
Absolutely.
Even after he's retired now, you watch him on some of these, because he's hilarious. You watch him on
really is.
You watch him on some of these shows, and he and Charles Barkley are
wrestling.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So funny.
Yeah.
But I mean, these are big dudes. I would consider these as like the functional giants of the world.
Well, have you seen him with I don't even know, darn it, like a 12-ounce water bottle?
Yeah.
It's like me holding a chapstick.
Yeah.
And he's like, get this guy some water. I mean, this is like a shot glass to him,
hilarious.
He is a big dude. And let's just say if I took him, I can't even picture, I don't even know, to a culture of, little, relatively smaller people, they would all call him a giant. He's huge.
Yeah. Well, so there's some other biblical stories.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear about some of the other
please.
ones? Okay. I got to take a little sip. I'm getting a little dry.
I think you're a little dry when you showed up this morning.
Yeah, I know. Just wait until later. Okay, so the other stuff from the Bible. Have you ever heard of the story in Genesis that talks about the fallen angels having sex with the daughters of man?
No, I wasn't supposed to read that one. They said, you skip this one in class, kids.
It's a very fascinating one because what do they call them? The Nephilim? And I wanted to read this one actually from the Bible because it's fascinating to me just because it is in the Bible. I don't remember reading it when I was a kid.
Right.
And so I wanted to read it. And then there's a little bit, I've got some video clips too to go in addition to it. So here. So this is from Genesis 6. And it talks a little bit about, this is pre-flood. Okay, here we go. So, sorry. It's been a while since I've opened the Bible. Actually, I was reading it last night.
I'm shocked that your hands aren't on fire.
You filthy atheist. Okay, so this is...
I didn't say it.
So this is, chapter 6. When man began to increase in numbers in the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And they married them. Let's see. Then the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with man forever, for he is mortal. His days will be 120 years. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting. Genesis 6 chapter 6, verse 4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. The Lord saw how great man's wickedness of the earth had become, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil all the time. The Lord was grieved, and he had made man on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. So the Lord said, I will wipe mankind who I have created from the face of the earth, men and animals, and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds of the air. For I am grieved that I have made them. Okay, so this is then leading up to the flood.
So where's Noah's the giant stuff?
So the Nephilim is the giant stuff. Now, this is where things are kind of like confusing. I have a little clip here. This is like a biblical scholar, and he talks about this particular thing and why it's so controversial and weird, and probably why I didn't learn this when I was, young, and totally into biblical stories. Okay, Ethan,
all right,
go ahead.
Let's hear it.
There are three. Genesis 6 says that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and they chose the daughters of men for themselves as wives, and they married them. So the question is, who are the sons of God that are marrying the daughters of men? Well, there are three different interpretations. One is that the sons of God is a reference to the godly line of Seth. Cain killed Abel, so after Abel died, Adam and Eve had relations, and Seth was born, and Seth carried on the godly faith of Abel. So one idea is that the sons of God are the descendants of Seth, marrying the daughters of men, the ungodly line of Cain. Second interpretation is that the sons of God refers to angels, angelic beings, intermarrying with humans. The third idea is that the sons of God are heroes from the mythical past, tyrant kings. We have stories from the ancient Near East, for example. We have stories of a person by the name of Gilgamesh, and he was part god and part human and accomplished many mighty feats.
Okay, so three potential interpretations. The early story of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel. Abel was supposed to be like the chosen, the good kid.
Proved it right.
So Cain got rid of that guy, and then Adam and Eve had Seth, and Seth was supposed to kind of make up for the loss of Abel, and he was then the chosen lineage there forward that God said,
right.
You're my children or whatever. Okay.
And Cain and his offspring he got kicked out of Dodge.
That's right.
To go live with other beings, which was funny, right?
Yeah.
Where the heck those guys come from?
Where they come from, yeah.
Were they the fallen angels?
Yeah.
But he's not a girl, so he had a hell of a time.
Well, yeah, so that's the interpretation of the first interpretation is just that there was a split in Adam and Eve's family, one being the chosen, from God, and the other were the fallen. Then the next interpretation, which I think is an interesting one, where you think about, we're talking about angels that God created in heaven mating with humans.
Right. And they're bad.
And their offspring is supposed to be this race of giants, the Nephilim.
Okay, so, but also, are fallen angels demons? right?
Well, yeah, some
Or-
people have called them demons. Yeah,
So-
absolutely.
All right. So we were kind of shot from the beginning, weren't we?
I'm no giant.
I guess they did. God did. Have the flood and wash all that out. And then,
Sort of. We'll
and
talk
then-
about that in a minute.
And then a couple of them kind of must have hung hard onto the boat because there's some evil now. So I don't know where the heck that came from.
I found a good theory, though. I want to talk about
All
that
right,
one.
all
Yeah,
right.
yeah, you might like it. You might like it.
Well, we'll see.
But so anyway, so that second is the fallen angels having sex with humans and finding the daughters of man really attractive and doing some business with them, and then that created this lineage or race of giants, and that's where, and in some other places in the Bible it talks about giants as well, and then the sons of God. The third one that this guy was talking about was the mythology that was going on around the Middle East, where these stories originated from, like Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was a king, part man and part God, and this was some mythology that had already existed within this sort of time.
But this is
frame.
something that's parallel to the Bible, not in the Bible.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So, but the people that wrote these different books of the Bible potentially could be bringing in some of the mythology that they knew was going on around them at the time,
Sure.
and including that in some of the storytelling that they're doing within the Bible. And so these three different interpretations I find fascinating because not one of them gets fully confirmed, but it makes you think what was the original author trying to express here in these particular stories. The Nephilim is described in the Bible I think in a few different places, and these are the giants. And I do recall when I was a kid, my grandmother had a book. I wish that I could have found it. I did look for it, but had a book that talked about these giants and how like large Adam and Eve were supposedly, because evidently humans were much bigger back then, and then it was at like right around the flood when humans basically became the sizes that they are today. Okay, this was the story that she told me originally. I didn't hear the story about the Nephilim and all these other pieces, but she did
Crazy,
say.
because I know I've read all this stuff, but I was so young.
It goes by,
and you just only some things stick.
Yeah.
Or that when you're young, you just overlook some of the stories. I mean, some of them just I don't know. Understand why some of them would hang out.
I think because sometimes the stories are told to us not via reading the Bible, but because of the stories that were created to, appropriately for kids.
Yeah.
They're a little bit more descriptive and something more relatable. I mean, the flood story is a really good example of that.
But they skipped all the sex and
all the incest and all the other stuff that had to have happened.
I guess that's good, but
but yeah, again, this is an interesting look at the biblical existence of giants, and I still look for some sort of archaeological proof. Now,
sure,
there's a little bit in, is it Sardinia? Sardinia?
Sure.
Yeah. It's like a big island near Italy, out in the middle of, is it the Mediterranean? I don't know if it's the Mediterranean. Anyway, maybe Ethan, you can look up a map of where Sardinia is. But there's stories that there were a race of giants on that island for like many, many years, and supposedly they're buried all over the place. And when these stories come out that they found evidence of it, then it gets debunked. Unfortunately, it's another one of those dead end mazes that you were talking about earlier. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, I think I do believe that there were giants in the term of, after looking into a lot of this stuff, in the term of very large people, but not in how I want to perceive them.
Yeah, not like Gulliver's Travel or some of these other,
which is good, really. I mean, we don't need any of that around.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what if there's 6 of them out there? We're done for.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, maybe we'll talk about what like this looks like in modern days.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Sound good?
Yep.
Dave and I appreciate you listening to the show. Please take a moment and write a review on Apple Podcast or podchaser.com. And since Spotify doesn't currently have reviews, simply telling your friends about the show would be great too. Also, you can always reach out to us at our website, nevertooserious.com, or via our socials at the NTS Podcast. And seriously, from the bottom of our hearts, thanks again for listening to the show. We are back talking a little bit about giants here.
Yeah.
And moving maybe a little bit towards more modern stuff.
Yeah.
There's like some famous, fakes out there that let's see here. I've got one from a newspaper article that actually was kind of a big deal a while back because a lot of people believed that this thing was true. It's the Cardiff giant. It's one of the most, it says here, one of the most famous archaeological hoaxes in American history. Is a 10-foot tall, 3,000-pound purported petrified man uncovered on October 16, 1869.
Wow.
Yeah, the story about it is really funny because this guy made it. He made it out of stone. He hired some guy to chisel out this man's body, and they went to the point where they put like needles and stuff in like a paddle or something and started banging on it to create what was supposed to look like
erosion
pores
no.
on skin. Yeah. And they used to charge people to go and see it.
Boy. To go back there and to hoax myself into a life, man, I'd be loaded.
Yeah, there's a picture of it there too, Ethan, if you want to go through the link. But it became part of the P.T. Barnum.
Oh, they even put his dinghy on there.
Yeah, they did.
Oh my god!
But that's not unusual in like Greek mythology.
Well, you would think that no.
But they weren't claimed to be real.
But if he's sitting there, petrified, some things might wither away. Not this his circumcised dinghy.
So funny. Dave, you crack me up.
Well,
yeah. So P.T. Barnum put it on display, and
that's so funny. Well, why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
I mean,
I know.
That's his. What is that? The bearded woman or whatever, that they had at the circus
kind
show.
of the freak shows that they
make
had.
people come and see, and then most of the people that came and saw it paid the money to see it and was probably disappointed. But who cared? What does he care? He got the money for it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ethan, look up the Hugo brothers. I'm kind of curious about them.
Check out. So, like you were talking about, what's going, the more modern.
Mm-hmm.
These guys to me look like the modern, giants.
Mm-hmm.
They look relatively functional. They're just giant dudes, man. I mean, but they're not 10, 12 feet tall.
Yeah. Yeah, those guys are pretty tall.
And, to me, that's kind of how I would see biblically what giants are.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that proves that it's very, very possible. I mean, that's how I would call that there were giants there then too.
Yeah, the only issue, one of the issues that I have is the functionality of a lot of these folks.
Right.
Some of the NBA players, like Shaq, he's a unique one because he's very functional.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that he has had any health issues in regards to his height. But there are other folks like the Big Show. We were talking about WWE wrestlers. He had the pituitary. I can't even say the pituitary gland.
Right.
A tumor, and it created too much growth hormone. And this is a very common thing. Gigantism is a common medical condition where the pituitary gland is producing too much human growth hormone, and what it does is it, prior to the growth plates, they just grow enormously, and then they get to a point where they can't hardly function.
Right. And they often die early.
Yeah, die at a young age. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's really sad.
Right.
I'm not sure about the Hugo brothers though. I don't know. Maybe Ethan, you can figure out what their lifespan was like and if they had gigantism.
But, and that's the thing is though that these guys were for real,
Mm-hmm.
So there's no doubt that people wouldn't call them giant. And like these guys, you should look up after this. No, let's check this out, and then I'll have you check out a couple other guys.
Let's see here. 1876 to 1916 reached a height of 2.3 meters. What does that translate to in feet? Is that over 7 feet?
I'll tell you, that's they were only like in their 40s when they died, I think, right?
7'5".
That's tall.
Mm-hmm.
Shaq would be looking up to him.
Yeah. Ethan, why don't you look up how tall Shaq is? I want to say he's like 7'6" or not 7'6". Like 6. What was it? 7'1". Yeah. Is that what it is? 7'1". Shaquille O'Neal 7 feet 1 inch. Yeah.
Damn, is he really?
And then Yao Ming.
Yeah, Yao Ming's like 12 feet tall.
Yeah. 7'6". Damn. Yeah.
That's tall as hell.
It's pretty tall.
Like I said, it's like a 6'4", 6'5" guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's tall to me. I mean, when they're standing next to you, you are looking up, and I could go like this, oh, they're only this much taller.
Yeah.
But it's significant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you look up the Kashmir brothers, I think maybe they're brothers, Kashmir giants, and these guys are, I think they're the equivalent to the Hugo brothers.
Kashmir giants, 1903. Yeah, I'm kind of curious because, I mean, in thinking in terms of more modern, of course, it's more close to our time, and so there's more potential for evidence, pictures
Right.
and whatnot.
But these are NBA size people.
Yeah.
Even the last guys, that's relatively NBA size,
Sure.
which is crazy because they're freaking huge.
Yeah.
But they're rare.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see them all the time, and we only get to see a lot of them in one place because most of them are playing, basketball. But there's a couple people I work with that are, oh my gosh, upper 6, 6 feet. It's just insane. But these are this is just proof that there was big people back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And who's to say that Goliath was, like he was an athlete?
Yeah.
He had probably a big man with a big mouth, didn't have to do much. He had probably an army that could take care of business, and he just, he couldn't duck and bob and weave outside, when he hucked that stone, So it's possible that he had the same issue. There's a reason why he was the giant, and then he had his army that weren't of giants.
Yeah, I can't remember the entire story, but yeah, he was sent out there because he was supposed to intimidate the Israelites, and the challenge was if you can take down me, Goliath, that we will serve you.
Right.
But if Goliath wins, then you guys will serve us.
Well,
and they waited. I want to say it was like 40 plus days, and it was like every morning he'd get up and go out and taunt them. And
just a
eventually,
big, scary bully.
Yeah, and then eventually, little David came out. He was serving food to his brothers that were in the army, I guess, and was like, "Hey, I'll go out there,
take care of this."
Yeah, I'll take care of this.
The small. This isn't the same, but I think it was, what was it? The movie Troy.
Mm-hmm.
Brad Pitt's character, Achilles.
Yep.
I can't recall. It might have been in the early beginning of the movie, and they had this huge dude, and they go, "You go get your main guy, and we'll just save everybody, and we'll let them fight, and whoever wins this fight, then that's going to be, who's going to be the victor." And there's this big beast of a crazy man that anybody would be like, no, I'm going to pass on this one.
Mm-hmm.
And Brad Pitt, he's not a big guy at all. And his skill went up and defeated him. And so it's kind of the story a little bit there.
But this is a very common mythological story. Like, so many different cultures have this particular story where the little man beats the big man.
Absolutely. Don't get any thoughts.
Yeah. I want to go to some of these modern day, because we were talking about, basketball. There's a top 10 list of the tallest NBA
Yeah, I want to hear those.
Basketball
Yao
players.
Ming's got to be one of those guys.
And yeah, absolutely.
I probably don't know anybody but that guy.
You might. I was surprised when I was going through this list. But yeah, the tallest one, there's two guys that were really close to each other. The tallest one in history, you're going to have to zoom in. My eyes can't read that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this guy's 7'7".
And he's next to another NBA player that makes him look like he's a troll doll.
Yeah, how do you say his name? Georgie Marisian?
Marison? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, 7 feet 6 inches. I mean, the picture is he's just.
Does he hurt when he runs down the? I mean,
scroll
runs up and down.
You'll see injury down at the bottom. It says he had a series of injuries that retired him in year 2000.
I could only imagine what his hips and knees were like.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is as I read about some of these players, they have broken feet, constant joint problems. So scroll up a little bit. I think Manute Bol is the next one. There he is. Manute Bol, 7'7". Really, he's the second tallest only by, I think they said, 1 millimeter.
Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, how do you get that accurate? I mean, just grow your hair a little bit taller. I don't know. But 7'7" is pretty dang tall. But look at his weight.
He only weighs 200 pounds?
7'7".
You don't want to step out in a gusty, in a gusty weather.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's not enough.
Super thin. Now
he might save his legs.
He had a 10-year career.
Well,
it looks like.
There you go.
So that's pretty good. He blocked a lot of shots. But if you think about your wingspan, when you're 7'7", your wingspan is up at the rim.
Yeah, I just don't know why he doesn't just stand there by the basket and they just throw it to him. He grabs it and drops it, grabs it, drops it, grabs it, drops it in.
Well, it's all those other guys can jump. So
yeah, well,
But yeah, I mean that's the thing is that, he did pretty well. But again, very very slim 7'7" guy.
That's
200
insane.
pounds is ridiculous. But he had a lot of
that would be like
block
me
shots.
weighing 120.
Mm-hmm.
Tiny.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah,
that's a tiny 7'7" man.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
But not super mobile. I mean, relatively good for his size. But if you compare that to a guy who is like 6'7", they are way more mobile. Way more mobile.
Yeah.
I was reading about some of these more modern day giants, and they all had all these different circulatory issues. Their hearts having issues. They all died. So most of them have died at a very young age.
So you're implying that they got that big because they were respectfully defective.
Well, their growth hormone went crazy.
They're having it's not natural. It's because something bad happened. Or bad was happening.
Well, I mean, bad might be a relative term, but yeah, I mean, something physically is happening to them where their body can't keep up.
They get big, and it's creating harm.
Yeah,
it's not like they could sit there and work out and get stronger to, balance their issue.
Yeah, and maybe in some cases, if you look at the WWE stars, Ethan, go back to the list. You can see the top 10 from WWE. I think this is more interesting than basketball in some cases because in basketball, you can kind of get away with some of the stuff. I mean, you still have to be able to run, and do some skills or whatever. WWE has a tendency to have a lot more violence.
Well, you have to be like borderline Cirque du Soleil people. The stuff they do. Yeah. Even the big guys still have to how about this? Take a pounding and fall.
And to lift some of these wrestlers. If you look, I was listening to some of the stories about Andre the Giant and how bad his back was. I want to say that Hulk Hogan was telling a story about how, because Andre, I think, slammed Hulk Hogan, and he was talking about how bad his back was at the time.
Really?
When he made the movie The Princess Bride, they had to do so much to support Andre the Giant because that was post WWF wrestling.
If you haven't seen that movie, you got to go see it. I think that's a
classic. It's one of my favorites.
I love it.
Yeah.
Anybody want a peanut? I can't do it. But
yeah, really good stuff. So Jorge Gonzalez, how tall is he? 8 feet tall. That's big.
That's a giant.
Yeah,
in my eyes, I think that's a giant.
Yeah, think about Manute Bol, right? 7'7". This guy's 8 feet.
Holy crap!
Yeah, I know.
Nope. I don't. Only thing I need him for is to be a friend. I do not want to piss that guy off at all.
Andre the Giant, 7 feet. What was it? 4 inches.
And that's ginormous. And he is ginormous.
Yeah, he's also very thick guy.
Yeah.
The Big Show. If you want to scroll down a ways. Yeah, well, a lot of similar body types. That guy, the Great Khali, very tall. I think I've seen him in some movies too. 7'1". The Big Show.
But they have to do some quick sprints and jumping, and it's got to be brutal on them.
It's got to be, yeah. Yeah, the Big Show. Another guy, always reminded me of, of Andre the Giant. Just
Man, they
because
need to make their own.
WWE
needs to make their own NBA team. Good luck with killing everybody.
They probably flatten all the basketballs.
Yeah, probably.
but yeah, the Big Show. He also has a case of gigantism and that pituitary. I've really struggled saying that word.
It's okay.
Pituitary gland. He tells a story about the number of like eggs and pancakes and other things that he was. I mean, the enormous number of calories that kid was eating, or that guy was eating as a kid, was crazy.
Right. I was looking up that there was a place in Ireland. They call it. What do they call it? The land of the giants.
Mm-hmm.
And in this area, 1 out of 150 people are born with
gigantism.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot. That's a lot more than what we have here. So that makes some sense.
But I think that there's a genetic component to all these things.
And guess what? That's why I totally could see there being, quote, how they called giants back then.
Mm-hmm.
And just like anything we talk about, I went fishing and I got a 12-inch fish, and the next thing you know, it's been
your story
12 to 24 inches, and
when you become a grandpa, boy, Dave, that fish is gonna be
big whale. And
that's right.
And back in the day, that, let's just go, what do they say, 6'9" Goliath is now a 10-foot Goliath. It became, you could get, that story could be dull now.
Well,
let's heighten it.
Oh, that's a good one, Dave.
Well,
that's a good one. But the idea of a story growing over time, having something that maybe could have been a real person at the beginning, and as the oral story grows through the generations, they become this mythical thing.
Yeah, like David cut his head off. Maybe it was his left pinky at first.
Yeah.
Just throughout the years, it came all the way to his head.
Maybe it was just a lock of hair. I don't know. Yeah, who knows? But yeah, I mean, some of these stories definitely can grow over time and become something that is totally fake. But if you had the original storyteller, maybe you could get a different version.
So in my looking up the giants, I was disappointed, saddened. I wanted to see proof of a 36-footer, a 12-footer. Oh my goodness. I wanted to see those proof. I didn't find any of that. But on a positive note, I could say that we do. How about this? I changed my perception of what a giant is. Mm-hmm. And we do walk with giants. And they exist more now than ever, I feel. And we just got to look around or turn on to ESPN and watch the basketball team.
That's right.
But they're everywhere. And because I got to tell you, if you're 7 feet tall, you are a giant. Mm-hmm. And even if I'm 6'5", that's tall, because I know the difference of 5 inches to me is. So we walk with giants, man.
Yep.
They exist.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again for catching the show. You can see the video version of this on YouTube, Rumble, and on Spotify.
Yes, sir.
The podcast, pretty much anywhere that you catch your podcast. We'd appreciate you telling a friend. We'd love to grow the audience. More information on our website
at nevertooserious.com.
And you can send us an email
at mailbag@nevertooserious.com.
And until we see you next time, take care
and be safe.